The title of our section 14.8 is the Lagrange multiplier. But this Lagrange multiplier method برضه to find extreme values of a function, but in addition, I'm going to put a condition with my function. Okay, like these types of problems. This problem, مثلا, قلنا find the points on the surface, okay, that are closest, مثلا, to the origin. We solved this problem in the previous lecture, right? This problem actually was, and then I needed to minimize the distance squared between the point xyz and the origin. And I defined this function. Remember this from last lecture? I defined the distance square function, which is x squared y squared plus z squared. And it is constrained that these points x, y, z should lie on this surface, and call it the constraints, x squared minus z squared equal 1. حد recall كده how did we solve this problem last lecture? We want to resolve it using the other method, but let's أول try to resolve it again using the last lecture, the information we have from last lecture. But this is the distance squared function, x squared plus y squared to be minimized, subject to the points must lie on this surface, x squared minus z squared equal 1. And I'm going to eliminate one of the variables, مش كده like we did, and plug it فين في الفانكشن, وبالتالي هيبقى معايا function of two variables, and I'll do my maximum and minimum by getting my critical points. بالتالي هنا بقى لي better eliminate x. ليه؟ لأن x there is another condition. If I did it the opposite, there is another condition على x, but there is no condition على z. So it's better to substitute x squared هي eliminated from my formula. So my function will be a function in y with z only. I'm going to eliminate the x. يبقى I'm going to have هنا كده 1 plus z squared plus y squared plus z squared. I eliminated the x squared with this relation. يبقى معايا 2z squared plus y squared plus 1. Okay. Now I have this function. I want to minimize it. يبقى I reduce the problem from the problem of two equations اللي هي f and g to the problem of solving best finding the extreme values of this function. Okay. طيب I'm gonna get my critical points. يبقى partial f partial y this time يبقى تبقى 2y partial f partial z اللي هي 4z equated by 0, and from these two equations I can get my critical point, which will be the point for y and z, which will be 0 0. Let's solve it here. يبقى y is a 0, z is a 0, and I know that there is a relation between x and z from my surface اللي هي 1 plus z squared, يعني ال x is a 1. يبقى from here I find that x is plus or minus 1. يبقى overall بقى the critical point is the point 1 0 0 and negative 1 0 0. This is what you did. Now I found the point. All I care about is the function value at these points. Okay. If I want to make sure that this is a maximum or a minimum, I could apply the second derivative test and check if it's a maximum or a minimum. Okay. How I could do observation على my problem and say مثلا x, y z can increase infinitely, and the value I found is a minimum, and so on. Okay, and I know that this is an extreme point because I got sorry هنا I don't know ليه لأنه هنا I got it using the critical point. So هنا I must do my second derivative test. خلاص كده يبقى بالتالي the value, what is the value of the function? A substitute فين بقى؟ anyone بقى. Okay, يبقى هنا لو substituted here يبقى I'll have a 1 and a 1. يبقى واضح ان minimum distance from the surface to the origin, actually the distance is equal to 1. Okay, this is the solution of this problem. I want to revisit this problem using the graphics, يعني graphic solution. I want to look at the graphical solution of this problem. We can definitely sketch this hyperbolic shape اللي هو x squared minus z squared. When I do my traces هنا I'll find ان انا عندي في ال xz plane the XZ plane. Actually, I have this hyperbola that has a vertex that starts من ال X اهو with Z. And if I want to draw this, definitely X will, and the Z is equal to 0, X is plus or minus 1. So it starts from here, and I have this hyperbola, صح? You agree with this? طيب this is في ال XZ plane. طب what about ال Y؟ هنا ال surface بتاعتي can freely يعني has all values of Y، يعني Y there is no restriction على Y، يبقى Y is زي ما اتفقنا all R، يبقى بالتالي I have this hyperbola actually extending infinitely in parallel lines to the Y axis. That's why I extend this curve hyperbola, I extend it infinitely. That's why we call these shapes cylinder مش كده أو cylindrical shapes with the base بتاعي هنا is this hyperbola. As if I have a cylindrical shape and the base بتاعي هو these hyperbolas. Got the idea? طيب now I know that this is the surface. I'm looking for what? I'm looking for points on this surface, any point على الsurface دي, but at the same time I wanted to have the minimum distance from the origin. يبقى the minimum distance مش كده؟ واضح from this shape what is the minimum distance from the origin؟ على طول هتقول لي ايه؟ What are the points on the surface that are nearest to the origin؟ ايه اقرب حاجه للاوريجن هنا من ال
1 و 0 0 negative 1 و 0 0.
These are the points that I got using my mathematics before, صح? Using my critical points. يبقى بالتالي واضح ان these 2 points هم the nearest the nearest points. يبقى the points plus or minus 1 و 0 0, these are the points on the surface. I need you to understand the problem. These are the points on the surface that satisfies my minimum distance. Okay. طب where is the function of the minimum distance؟ يعني how can I illustrate the function نفسها بقى؟ If this is the function of the surface D defines the constraint. I needed the points هنا على this constraint. Where is the function؟ اللي هي distance squared بتاعتي. كانت شكلها ايه؟ كانت x squared plus y squared plus z squared. If I want to graph the function with the constraint, I'm actually this is لو انت حطيت level curves بقى هنا تبقى level surfaces. لو حطيت ده as a constant, what does this define? X squared plus y squared plus z squared equals k. This is equation of
surface.
This يعني it's a surface, but what shape of surface is it sending?
A sphere. Here?
It's a sphere. يعني actually the distance equation actually the sphere. If I want to write it's a sphere برضه السنتر بتاعها is the origin مش كده؟ and has the radius اللي هو ايه؟ root k ده. فبالتالي if I want to put the equation f with the g or the constraint, let's call the constraint g, and put them on the same three-dimensional shape, I'll get something like this, صح؟ But the graphical solution actually, as if I'm telling you again بقى ايه؟ as if I'm looking هنا على الأوريجين, I'm drawing my sphere here, and I want to find the maximum radius of sphere that will touch, صح كده? That will touch these hyperbolas. Definitely, these are the sphere here, if I draw it from the side كده, and these are my hyperbolas, okay? They will touch at which point? What point will both of these touch each other? ما هي touching ده معناه يعني أنا طبعًا الcircles دي could I have more level curves. أنا ممكن الsphere كانت تبقى bigger مش كده؟ أو and so on, and I could have several level curves of my sphere. كل ما أكبر الريزة. But which one of these spheres that I care most اللي هي هتtouch يا دوبك هتtouch مين؟ my constraint. يعني لو ده الجي بتاعي أهو إيه؟ اللي هو الهايبربولاس. أنا عايز بس البوينتس at which I'm gonna touch the sphere. يبقى مين أهم بوينتس عندي هنا؟ These points, صح؟ Right? Got the idea? إحنا we're trying to arrive at the concept of the Lagrange multiplier using this graphical example. فبالتالي هنا على طول you'll observe إيه بقى؟ If you draw a tangent plane بقى تعالى ارسم لي tangent plane between عند ال point of interest دي والsurface والhyperbola. Assume that this is a plane tangent plane. طبعا انت فكر فيه 3 dimension بس احنا راسمينه كده كأن رسماه في الليفل كيرف بتاعه. if you draw a tangent plane, what is the normal to this tangent plane? لو حد قال لي يبقى ياخد الجايزة الكبرى. What is the normal to this tangent?
Z axis.
Radius.
أنا عايزة relate the normal to the tangent plane. I want to relate it with the functions اللي هم ال F وال G. لو عايزة أسهلها عليك شوية.
يعني هو مش radius يعني؟
لا. Radius is not a vector. Radius ده في الآخر scalar number. احنا
عادي vector. اوكي.
ده vector.
Gradient.
برافو عليكي. We know from before يا جماعة فاكرين إن النورمال to the tangent plane كان actually هو ال gradient to the function at the point صح of tangency مش كده؟ فاكرين المعلومة دي؟ مش النورمال كان in the direction of the gradient. فبالتالي I'm gonna use this هنا and I'm gonna say at this point actually اللي هو الكيرف. خلينا نعمل الهايبربولا بلون تاني كده اهي. Actually at the point of tangency الهايبربولا التانجنت بتاعها ايه؟ كان هيبقى الجريدينت ايه؟ الجريدينت كده صح؟ لأن ده التانجنت بلين بتاعهم هما الاثنين touch each at this G. وبعدين when I want to look at the circles بتاعتي اللي هي السفير اقصد الليفل كيرفز بتاعتها برضه هلاقي هنا في التانجنت ايه برضه to the نفس التانجنت بلين فبالتالي النورمال هنا اهو. فوات I am gonna deduce now? I'm gonna deduce that the gradient بتوع both بقى the constraint G and the function واضح ان هما in the same direction. او بمعنى اخر the gradient delta F is parallel to the gradient A delta G at the extreme values. صح؟ When I take any other point ده رايح في ناحية والتاني رايح في ناحية فما ما هماش gradient. The point at which they touch the gradients will be parallel. يعني ايه parallel؟ يعني scalar multiple of each other. يبقى the gradient of F is a scalar multiple of the gradient of G at the extreme values. يبقى بالتالي the graphical solution أو actually I deduced from it or I observed that the gradient of the function F and the G اللي هي السيرفيس اللي هي I want my points عليها are parallel. يبقى all I have to do is solve this vector equation. No, gradient is a scalar multiple of the G and I'll call my scalar هنا أو هاخد السيمبل lambda. We all طبعا know this lambda مش كده؟ And together with this one. يبقى I'm gonna solve this for x for the points. مين ال unknowns هنا? I'm looking for the point x, y, z and now I added كمان another unknown which is the lambda. يبقى I want to solve these equations for x, y, z and lambda. Okay, if I found my points then I found the extreme, the points at which I'm gonna have these extreme values. طبعا we don't do sketching, we don't do anything. I'm gonna على طول apply ال theorem أو the method. يبقى ال method actually it steps بقى. يبقى if you understand what we said before يبقى you can apply ده simply. هتيجي تقول إذا أنا عايزة أدور على maximum minimum values of a function subject to this constraint ماشي. All I have to do is find or solve the values x, y, and lambda such that these equations are satisfied. The gradient of the function is a scalar multiple of the gradient of the constraint. In addition, the constraint equation g of x, y, z equal b. ليه بحتاج كل ده؟ أنا عندي هنا 4 unknowns. This vector equations will give me 3 equations مش كده؟ equate ال x components. يعني لو جينا كتبناها ايه تاني بدل ما اتلخبط هنا كده. يعني لو جينا كتبنا this equation اهي the gradient of f if I have 3 independent variables is a scalar multiple of the gradient of g. يبقى each of gradient will have 3 components. يعني ال gradient f ده هيبقى عنده partial f partial x partial f partial y partial f مش كده؟ equal lambda في partial g partial x partial g partial y partial g partial. Got the idea? يبقى now we have a vector equation. Actually it is equivalent to a 3 scalar equation. I'm gonna equate corresponding components. يعني a partial f partial x equal lambda gx وهequate ال y's هتديني f y بتساوي lambda في gy equate ال Z يبقى lambda في G Z يبقى how many equations this vector equation gave me? It gave me 3 equations. I have 4 unknowns x, y, z and lambda يبقى and in addition to the constraint equation اللي هي G of x, y, و z equals A equals K. Okay? يبقى I can solve for x, y, z مش كده اللامدا. Actually I don't need حتى اللامدا يعني إذا اللامدا ما طلعتش وأنا بحل when I didn't need it I don't care about the value of lambda. I care specifically about the x, y and z and then this is the first step. The second step I'm gonna plug these points that I got from the first part in the function and get my A function values. يبقى بالتالي the largest definitely هتبقى هي إيه؟ My maximum مش كده value of f and the minimum will be or the smallest يعني will be the minimum value of f. Got the idea? يبقى to implement actually it's easy but you should understand إنه you are solving a function. This is the surface of your function and you want extreme value. What is the extreme value of this function? واحد هيقول لي واضح إنها the top. This is an absolute maximum. But do I want the absolute maximum? لا أنا I want f subject to a subject to g equal k. يعني إيه g equal k? This is a level curve of the equation g مش كده. I want to see where this g will cut my surface and in a maximum. I need this مثلا. أنا عايز maximum but this is the maximum of f but subject to G. Got the idea? It's not just getting this maximum. I don't want this. This is the absolute maximum of f. إنما I don't want the absolute of f. I want the maximum of f subject to G. This we call these types of problems. We call them optimization problems. Actually, it's a very simple technique to implement, and all you have to do is get the unknowns هنا. It's solving algebraic equations, and you get very difficult problems using this simple technique. Any questions? Any questions? But this is different عن the problems that you took last lecture. Last lecture كنا يا إما بنجيب الابسولوت أو اللوكال. This time I'm getting the absolute maximum, yes, but subject to a specific condition or constraint. Let's look at this illustrative example برضو to make sure الidea وصلت بتاعت level curves والgradients. I want to find the smallest and largest values of this function on the ellipse x squared plus 4y squared equals 8. واحد هيقول لي ما دي شبه الأولانية خالص. I could eliminate مش كده a variable و put it هنا and get my maximum. Yes, you can do this. But sometimes it's not feasible and sometimes it ends up with messy calculations. يعني messy calculation ألاقي calculations كبرت معايا و square roots وأعمل and so on. Alternatively, and I could use Lagrange multiplier and solve it using simple algebraic equations. معايا؟ يبقى this is another way to solve such problems using يبقى I want هنا بدل ما solve it using this technique and I want to solve it using Lagrange multiplier method. What should we start with? But what is the first step? We're gonna implement بقى. Lagrange قال لي if you want to maximize or minimize a function subject to a constraint يبقى بالتالي be very clear مين ال function to find the extreme values of. This is my f to be maximized or optimized and subject to the constraint g which is given by the function x squared plus 4y squared equals 8. I must be very specific mean the function or mean the constraint. Type the second thing the gradients must be a scalar multiple of each other. Let's get my gradient of f هنا هتبقى y و x equals lambda times the gradient of g which will be 2x و 8y. في حد مش عارف ازاي جبنا الجريدينتس دي؟ طيب خلاص this is the Lagrange ended up هنا I'll end up with a system of equations. The first equation equating ال x component هنا وهنا هيديني y equals 2 lambda x مش كده؟ The second equation equating ال y هيديني x is equal to 8 lambda y. If I have these two equations, remind myself I still have the third equation which is the constraint. I'll put it برضو هنا with my equations to know that I need to solve these three equations simultaneously to get x, y, and z. If I need to solve these for x, y, and z, مفيش z هنا بقى for x, y, and lambda. ماشي يا جماعة؟ في any questions لغاية دلوقتي؟ طيب solve بقى. This is a system of equations. You need to simplify as much as possible to be able to find a solution. And you need to find all possible solutions. What do you do here? I need hints.
Divide.
يعني be شوية specific.
Divide 1 by 2.
Equation 1 by equation 2.
2.
طيب يبقى if you divided equation 1 by equation 2 يبقى as if هنا you're taking condition or the case in which you are assuming that neither x nor y are zeros, then you're dividing by x and y, صح؟
Yes.
طيب يبقى بالتالي I'll end up with y is equal to 2 lambda x over 8 lambda y مش كده؟ يبقى this gives me 4y squared is equal to x squared مش كده؟
Yes.
If I have a relation اهو يبقى x is plus or minus 2y. طيب if you have my x a relation between x and y يبقى I need to find values. يبقى I'll go put this فين بقى in equation 3 صح؟ constraint بقى. يبقى I'll go back to my constraint, put the relation that I got يبقى x squared which is equal to أو خلينا بالx squared يبقى x squared ال 4y squared from here is equal to x squared equals 8 يعني x is x squared is a 4 يعني x is a plus or minus 2. If I have a value here for x then definitely I have a value for y where y will be equal to plus or minus 1 مش كده؟ يبقى I have a point. أفندم؟
يعني ليه عملنا y over x أصل يعني ليه؟
هي we subdivided the equation 1 by equation 2 مش كده؟ فعندي this left hand side اهي y أي طريقة يعني any way you try to manipulate your equations but be careful when you divide by anything دايما state clearly that it's not a zero وبعدين consider this case بعد كده. يعني we could do other ways يعني واحد بقى لا I don't want to divide and I'm gonna substitute مثلا يبقى مثلا هو عنده ال y is equal to مثلا 2 lambda x لو جيت شلت ال y هنا in 2 مش كده؟ فهيديني x is equal to يبقى 8 وال lambda وال y actually is 2 lambda 2 lambda x صح؟ يبقى عنده ايه هنا كده؟ يبقى
هنا بس lambda square x
lambda squared وهنا x يبقى ايه؟ يبقى هنا برضو you'll have to divide by أو ممكن أحطهم الناحية التانية بقى يبقى أجي أقول كده 16 lambda squared negative 1 مش كده؟ times x equal 0 يبقى either x is a 0 or ال 16 lambda squared هي اللي بتساوي 1 ف it's more يعني أطول صح؟ If you went with this ترجع تجيب lambda in terms of x. Actually it's more it's longer يعني. Let's go with this technique بقى. مش كده؟
ماشي
Yeah. Anything will do but arrive at a solution and be very careful when you're doing the solution. طيب my y بقى is a plus or minus 1 my x is a plus or minus 2 ايه تاني بقى؟ خلاص كده يبقى I have my points plus or minus 2 plus or minus 1 يبقى these points I know will have extreme extreme values يبقى all I have to do is plug these points in the function مش كده؟ يبقى the function at these points and then I'm gonna check all values. الفانكشن هنا كانت عبارة عن ايه بقى؟ x times y. يبقى بالتالي either I have if they have the same sign يبقى I'm gonna have a 2 أو negative 2 if they have opposite signs مش كده؟ يبقى my function will have a maximum value of which is equal to 2 صح يا جماعة؟ and will have a minimum value of f if it is equal to negative 2. This is my final answer. If I care about the points specifically يبقى لازم أقول له بقى the points هنا ال maximum occurs عند يبقى same sign يعني 2 و 1 و negative 2 و negative 1 if I want the point. But if they didn't ask خلاص I don't care يعني. هنا negative 2 و 1 و 2 و negative 1. Got the idea? Look at تاني كده. يبقى we applied the Lagrange multiplier to find extreme value for the function xy subject to the constraint x squared plus 4y squared equals 8. We obtained ثلاثة algebraic equations أهو, solved them simultaneously, got my xy, substituted بقى في الفانكشن, got my value of the function. The largest is the maximum and the minimum.
طب دكتور
أيوه.
هو احنا ليه هنا جبنا اكس بزيرو والناحيه الثانيه ما جبناش الزيرو دي؟
ما انا لسه بقى عايزين نكمل صحيح. هتيجي هنا قلنا we excluded الزيروز صح؟
تمام.
I go with the same side دي بقى. يبقى بالتالي لو انا حطيت الكيس x is a zero, what solution will this give me بقى؟ هرجع بالراجع كده على my problems. If I put x is a zero in equation مثلا 1 يبقى what do I obtain? y is a zero مش كده؟ يبقى in equation 3 0 plus 0 equals 8. هل ده ينفع؟
لا.
يبقى كده يبقى definitely ده is not equal to يبقى this case is rejected. فاهم قصدي؟ برضه divided by y similarly y is a zero هتديك نفس القصة برضه rejected. يبقى these two cases are ايه؟ are rejected. يبقى I have only this case which I got إن هي these points الوحيدة اللي عندي. Sometimes these cases give solutions, so you should be very careful to continue. أنا I forgot actually. But you should be very careful to continue with your cases. ماشي? Got it? Thank you for this observation. Any questions? طب we want back to put this على the concept that we did with the first example. يعني لما نيجي نقول أنا عايز أعمل شوف الجرافينج بقى، فالجراف بتاع الجي دي الجي function صح؟ ده الكونسترين بتاعي. Actually it's an ellipse that looks like this وده الأكسيس بتوعي. طيب this is the function. I know I have at the extreme values I know that the function بتاعتي اللي هي x و y اللي in this problem will have a gradient at the points of maximum وبعدين لقينا الماكسيمم مثلا طلع ايه الماكسيمم value طلعت 2 مش كده والمينيمم value بالنسبه لي طلعت negative 2 using the mathematics. I want to see this على الجراف. يعني ايه طلعت 2 يعني xy بتساوي 2 وهنا xy بتساوي negative 2 مش ده معناها؟ طيب let's do بقى الكيرفز بقى let us see the curves بتاعت xy شكلها عامل ازاي وهل فعلا الجريدينتس are scalar multiple of ده ولا لا؟ يبقى لما اجي ارسم الليفل كيرفز let's us draw the level curves بتاعت ايه الفانكشن f يبقى هحط f equals k يعني xy equals ايه k يعني y equals k على x عشان to be able to draw it I want to draw these curves بقى. If y equals 1 على x I know it's like this. So when I change the k actually I'm gonna get a family of curves. يبقى لما k مثلا ب1 لما k ب2 and so on مش كده؟ طيب لو عندي negative values for x actually I'm gonna get curves on the other side. If I got برضو k negative I'm gonna get these values. Okay, يبقى for different combinations of positives between the x's and k's actually I'm gonna get all these level curves. يبقى ايه black lines دولت اللي انا I drew these are the level ايه انا already كاتبه these are the level curves of f صح كده؟ صح.
فين الاليبس في الموضوع؟
أفندم؟
يعني دول الليفل كيرفز اوف f of x بس هو فين يعني فين x squared plus 4y squared equals 8
ما هي دي بقى الكونسترين. انا عايزاكي بقى تاخدي البلو لاين ده، البلو ellipse ده and put it here وtell me where is your maximum and minimum. عارفين الماكسيموم والمينيمم طلعوا عندي ايه؟ 2 ونيجاتيف 2. يبقى I'm gonna draw my level curve بتاع الellipse. It's only one curve لأنه هو it is fixed. It's an equality صح؟ في هنا equal. هو مش قايل لي z equal x squared plus 4y squared. لا ده أنا عندي هنا equals ايه؟ equals 8. فبالتالي I have just one ايه؟ level curve for G. يبقى this is the level curve بتاع مين؟ بتاع G. What do I know بقى at the points اللي طلعوا لي plus or minus 2 و plus or minus 1. البوينتس بتاعتنا كانت عند 2 و1 مش كده؟ say مثلا this point 2 و1 و this point و this point و this point. مش هطلع لي 4 points؟ يبقى واضح ان فعلا at these 4 points I will have the gradient بتاع الفانكشن بتاعتي اللي هي level curves دي الجريدينت هنا اهو will be a scalar multiple او برضه parallel للgradients and so on. يبقى yes I have 4 points and I have 4 extreme values. 2 منهم are are maximum and 2 منهم are minimum values. So got the idea? يبقى ده الكونسبت of Lagrange multiplier برضه applied على this problem. This is the figure اللي هي في السلايدز عندنا. يبقى الأحمر ده هو level curve xy equals 2. It will touch G بتاعتي at this point اللي هي طبعا هتبقى point 2 و 1. كل ده ماشي with our mathematical solution. صح يا جماعة؟ Got the idea? طيب usually طبعا we don't do this in our problems. we solve على طول بقى. يعني ايه solve على طول؟ يعني I'm gonna put my Lagrange formula, get my x, y, z, plug it in the function. I got my extreme value. اوكي. امتى بعمل الillustration دي؟ في حاجه بقى ليها علاقه بالايه؟ الثيوري او الكونسبت بتاعت البروبلم. طيب let's solve this one. هنا بيقول لي ان الاكستريم values has a solution with both maximum and minimum. وبعدين بيقول لي use Lagrange to find this extreme value of the function. Actually this problem is a direct problem in which I'm given ان انا لازم استخدم Lagrange and I'm given the function f and I'm given the g function. يبقى بالتالي this is my g. Let's write it كده قصادنا ايه which is x squared plus y squared plus z squared equals 4. apply بقى Lagrange. It's only one concept. ايه هو الكونسبت؟ The gradient of f equals a scalar multiple of the gradient of g. وبرضه خليك specific عشان not to forget anything. f is a function of x, y, z. يبقى I expect 3 components with g, x, y, z I expect 3 components. طيب this is a vector. يبقى I'm going to open my arrow brackets اهي. يبقى what's the vector x gradient vector of x, y squared z. we'll do بقى partial derivatives. مرة بالنسبة للx يبقى I'm gonna get y squared z. بالنسبة للy I'm gonna get 2xyz. with respect to z I'm gonna get xyz. xy squared, sorry. xy. Okay, what is this? This is the gradient of the function f equals scalar multiple. I'll call it them قلنا lambda. Gradient of g. g هنا مين؟ x squared plus y squared plus z squared. يبقى I have 2x 2y comma 2z. خلاص that's it. I finished. I'm gonna put my equations and solve the system of equations that I'm gonna obtain. First equation يبقى equate corresponding by components مش كده؟ يبقى the x هديك y squared z equals 2 lambda x. The second one to xyz يديك 2 lambda y and xy squared يديك 2 lambda z. يبقى this is equation 1, equation 2 and equation 3. I need the fourth. Put it by my side هنا اهي x squared plus y squared اللي هي constraint اللي هي condition. Do the job بقى. What is the simplest way to solve these 4 equations for x, y, and z and lambda طبعا؟
هنعمل برضه divide زي القسم اللي فات.
Let's do something else بدل ال division عشان مش دايما you're able to do it. We can do it using division, but let's مثلا say I'm gonna do by substitution. I'm gonna use equation 1, find the formula for yz for y squared. هتديني 2 lambda x over z. Okay. I'm gonna substitute this in equation 3 لأن فيها y squared اهي. يبقى I'm gonna get x وبعدين put the y squared term اهو اللي هو 2 lambda x over z equals 2 lambda z. Anything will do بس I'm trying to change the technique شوية بس. طيب يبقى هنا I divided by z يبقى برضو I must say I'm dealing with the case where z is not equal to 0. صح؟ طيب simplify بقى اللي انت وصلت له ده هيحصل اديك ايه هنا؟
x squared equals z squared.
بس كده يبقى x squared equals z squared يعني x z plus or minus z يبقى this is an information I put in a box. طيب I'm gonna use this information. I still didn't use equation 2. يبقى from equation 2 يبقى x plus or minus z. I'm gonna use equation 2 اللي هي بقى ايه بقى 2x y z تساوي 2 lambda y. I can get here from هنا أجيب formula lambda is equal to xz يبقى I divided by y يبقى برضو I'm considering the case that y is not equal to 0 because I divided both sides by y. طيب يبقى بالتالي I obtain the formula lambda is xz. I'm gonna put this in ايه مثلا in any one of them in 1 يبقى y squared z equals 2 هو بتاع سخن الكمبيوتر سخن بس بيعمل اصله previous lecture. طولت الظهر يعني. طلعنا لامدا بإكس زد وقلنا هبلج this مثلا in 1 يبقى y squared z equals 2xz دي اللامدا times z times الx. هيديني ايه بقى هنا؟ y squared is ايه؟ is 2x squared يعني y plus or minus root 2x يبقى this is another relation. If I have this relation and this one, I found x is, was related to z, where y related to x. I could put all this in equation 4. I'm going to end up with x squared plus y squared, which is 2x squared, plus z squared اللي هي x squared equals 4. يعني x is plus or minus 1. يبقى بالتالي using this information now I have my x plus or minus 1, my y من هنا is is plus or minus square root 2, my z is plus or minus 1. يبقى I have the point at which I have extreme values. Step 2 and I'm going to plug these points in the function and I'm going to get my values and compare these values. الفانكشن كانت ايه بقى هنا؟ xy squared z اهي الفانكشن عبارة عن x y squared z. plugging بقى هنا يبقى I'm gonna do the product of these مش كده؟ وال y squared يبقى I'm gonna end up with 2 if they have the same signs and I'm gonna end up with -2 if they're gonna have opposite signs. يبقى this is a maximum value of f subject to the constraint g and this is a minimum value of f. برضو consider going back and taking the cases that you considered. انت كنت قايل z is not equal to 0. Consider the case z is a 0 and y is a 0. But if you put z is a 0, what are you gonna obtain? Will it be valid بقى؟ check it بقى. هيحصل ايه بقى لو حطيت z ب0؟
هتبقى كلها بزيرو.
هتبقى كلها ب0 بالظبط لانك انت لو حطيت z ب0 you're gonna put this in 1 مثلا in 1 ولا ايه؟ يبقى هيديك x ب0 ولو حطيتها in 2 يبقى هيديك y بزيرو. يبقى معنى كده انك انت وصلت ان x squared plus y squared اللي هي بقى equation 4 x squared plus y squared plus z squared هتديك 0 زائد 0 زائد 0 which is equal to 4 which is not possible صح؟ يبقى بالتالي this solution برضه is rejected أو refused. اوكي؟ يبقى I cannot have this case. يبقى بالتالي I only have this solution and this is my final answer. اوكي؟ got the idea؟
دكتور أنا عندي سؤال في المينيمم فاليو. دلوقتي أنا فاهم إحنا جبنا 2 إزاي، بس المينيمم فاليو المفروض إن الإيكويشن XY سكويرد زد فY سكويرد، حتى لو ال 2 بالنيجاتيف فالمفروض السكوير هيطير النيجاتيف.
طيب
فمنين جبنا نيجاتيف 2؟
ما هو انت لسه عندك الاكس والزد they could have opposite signs. يعني انت لو عايز تبقى very clear about the points نفسها at هتبقى هنا بقى هنا يبقوا عندهم الاكس والزد هم ال same sign صح؟ يبقى بالتالي عند 1 وبلس اور ماينس روت 2 دي مش فارق معايا، وعند اوكي ماشي. يعني could occur at plus or plus 1 plus or minus root و plus 1 أو تكون ايه بقى نيجاتيف و plus or minus root 2 و negative 1. يبقى عندك كام نقطة هنا actually 4 points صح؟ يبقى عندك 4 points على ال surface at which this function has a maximum value. عندك minimum هيبقى لو الاكس والزد هم اللي عندهم opposite signs، يعني هتبقى دي 1 يبقى دي تبقى نيجاتيف 1. هنا I don't care زي ما انت قلت عشان هي squared فit's always positive. هنا نيجاتيف 1 plus or minus وهنا هتبقى positive. فهمتوا؟
فهمت. ثانك يو يا دكتور.
To interpret الحاجة اللي أنا لقيتها. What does this mean? What does it mean إن أنا I have to? Is this the maximum of the function? يعني can I tell you is the absolute maximum of f is 2? Can I say this? هل absolute maximum of this function is 2؟ ولا لا؟ انت بتقولي ان الماكسيمم فاليو هي 2، هل دي الابسوليوت اوف ذا فانكشن من غير ما اقول بقى subject to اي حاجه؟
لا it's not the absolute.
It's not اكيد لان الفانكشن دي هي عباره عن x و y squared مش كده و z it goes infinitely for x y z، يعني هي ممكن تبقى infinity صح؟ انما لما قلت لك هات لي الماكسيمم اوف ذس فانكشن ما قلتلكش هات لي الماكسيمم وسكت، قلت لي هات لي الفانكشن on the surface مش كده اللي هي بقى satisfies the constraint g of x و y و z. اوكي يعني يبقى انت you got the maximum of the function f that is satisfied كمان by this equation. يعني لما ارجع للجي بتاعتي اهي في البروبلم this must satisfy that the point that I got. ايه البوينتس that I got؟ كانت 1 وروت 2 مش كده؟ يبقى the points that I got اللي هي كانت 1 وروت 2 وال1 صح؟ Does these points satisfy equation G؟ ما هي G عبارة عن إيه؟ عبارة عن x squared يبقى صح plus 2 squared y squared اللي هي 2 plus 1 which is equal to يبقى correct يبقى I'm right. فاهم قصدي؟ يبقى أنا I got the point على الفانكشن that is also satisfied by this constraint and it is definitely the maximum of f. This is yes a maximum but it's a maximum subject to a specific constraint. ما هياش يعني ده لو انا بتكلم على الماكسيمم الفانكشن دي بتروح لانفينيتي، انما I just got the maximum على surface معين على الجي بتاعتي. اوكي طلع بتاعي كام الماكسيمم؟ طلع 2. Got the idea? I hope yes because I noticed في exams this idea is not clear يعني. طيب find the points على الكون that are closest to the point. We have solved some problem like this last lecture. I want to solve it using Lagrange multiplier. But this is another technique to solve such problems. Let's الأول write our functions and then to apply the method. طيب what am I looking for تاني؟ I'm looking for the points A. يبقى بالتالي ال unknowns بتاعتي are the points that lie on the cone اللي هو z squared equals x squared plus y squared closest to the point. أنا أشيلها وأحط بدلها إيه دي؟ closest to the point 4 2 دي أشيلها وأحط بدلها إيه؟ that has minimum إيه؟ minimum distance مش كده؟ from the point P دي to the point C مثلا اسميها P1 يبقى from the point P1 to the point P يبقى مين ال minimum distance I don't know it I'm looking for this minimum distance okay I'm looking for the points X Y Z on this cone that gives me minimum distance from the point P1 ماشي طبعا احنا لسه قايلين if the minimum distance I could work with the distance square I don't care يعني يبقى بالتالي my function will be عبارة عن ايه بقى X Y اهي و Z will be the distance function اللي هي عبارة عن x distance between تاني اكتبوا لي distance between this point and the other what is the distance هنا يا جماعة
root x2 minus x1 squared
root اهي لو شلت
x2
square
squared plus y2 minus y1 squared plus z2 minus z squared
قلتي x squared
x2 minus x1 squared
ماشي ما احنا عندنا x2 minus x1 substitute بقى واديني على طول الفورمولا يبقى x2 اللي هي مين عندك اللي هي الاكس صح؟
اللي هي 4
والx1 اللي هي 4 يبقى هتبقى x minus 4 squared
x minus squared
والثانية هتبقى
y minus 2 squared
بالظبط كده والثالثة z minus 0 squared thank you so much بجد يبقى بالتالي انا اتفقنا I'll minimize the distance squared I don't care about the square root يبقى تبقى x minus 4 squared y minus 2 all squared plus z squared يبقى I'm preparing my problem it is not like the other one ال f given وال g given لا I'm looking for my f يبقى بالتالي I want to minimize this f أو maximize this f خلاص يبقى this is my f function طب where is the constraint يبقى I want to minimize f subject to إيه بقى what is the constraint هنا I need the points x y z صح to lie on this cone يبقى بالتالي my constraint اللي هو the function g of x y z in this problem actually it is the equation x squared plus y squared minus z squared equals 0 this is the level curve of this equation got the idea I interpreted the problem من ال word problem دي إلى شكل ال problem that I know how to solve using Lagrange multiplier but this is the equivalent problem I have two equations أهو واحدة بتاعت ال function to find the extreme values of والتانية بتاعت ال constraint بتاعت اللي هو the condition on this the condition that should be satisfied by the points ماشي got it now can we solve Lagrange yes everything is ready I have a function and I know I want to minimize this and I have my constraint يبقى على طول I'm gonna apply Lagrange just put the gradient وبرضه be very precise هنا هتبص هتلاقي الفانكشن بتاعتك how many variables عندك x y and z right يبقى بالتالي I expect the gradient will have 3 components برضه دي من الحاجات you miss وطبعا لو الجي must be برضه 3 components حتى لو هو defined ب 2 انما I'm expecting 3 components the problem هنا in 3 variables طيب put بقى the fill in the زي ما بيقولوا the blanks يبقى the gradient هحط vector اهو يبقى the gradient vector of the function يبقى 2x minus 4 مش كده I'm getting my partial derivatives اهي الفانكشن I'm getting the derivatives 2y minus 2 وهنا 2z صح equal the scalar multiple of the gradient of g here. The g is x squared plus y squared minus z squared. The gradient is 2x plus 2 comma قصدي 2y minus 2z. Okay, يبقى what are my equations هنا? The first equation I'm gonna equate بقى the components corresponding components يبقى عندي 2x minus 4 is equal to 2 lambda x مش كده؟ The second one is 2y minus 2 is equal to 2 lambda y. The third is 2z is equal to minus 2 lambda z. Remind yourself, you still have the constraint equation, which is your cone, I think, اللي هو x squared plus y squared minus z squared equals 0. But you want to solve these for x, y, z and find your lambda. Check كده, can you do this? How are we going to solve it best way? برضو if you divide it by x, y, or z, you should mention that you're taking the case where x, y, and z is not equal to 0.
Look, I can choose any equation or divide it by whether x, y, or z ولا لازم
مش شرط divide by x، على حسب شكل equation you're gonna do الجوب، يعني مش شرط ان انا اعمل division، بس انا بقول عامة if you did division take care that you don't that you mention they're not equal to 0. وبعدين برضه you need to check these cases لأن it's possible that it could get you an answer يعني when I'm writing مثلا if say مثلا I اخترت أعمل نفس الطريقة اللي عملناها قبل كده ولا نعملها بطريقة تانية this time. هقول x minus first equation اهي x minus 4 is equal to a lambda x. I divided by 2. I could write it maybe in another way مثلا هاجي اكتبها كده. Let's combine the x's. يبقى I have x ولا هتبقى ايه؟ لا مش سهل، مش هتبقى فيه زيرو.
دكتور هو مش أنا ممكن أجيب اللامدا من equation 3 يعني أكنسل التوز والزيز مع بعض تبقى لامدا بنيجاتيف 1.
ممكن طبعا this is a solution. You could start with this اللي هي simplest one. بس هنا you assume ايه بقى؟ when you cancel the z يبقى as if you are assuming ان z is not equal to a to 0 صح؟ لأن as if you divided by z.
Yes.
يبقى بالتالي هنا you took a case in which z is not equal to 0. يبقى then you found that then lambda is equal to -1. Okay?
Yes.
Now you could put this information in equation 1. You're gonna get x minus 4 is equal to lambda بقى -1 يبقى هتبقى كام؟ negative x صح؟ and you put it in 2 برضه يبقى you're gonna get y minus 2 is equal to negative y. يبقى solve بقى these two equations يبقى 2x is a 4 يبقى x is a 2 مش كده؟ وهنا 2y is a 2 يبقى y is a 1. يبقى you got an answer اهو for this case in which you found a point which is 2, 1 and your z is a we still didn't get the z. يبقى I'm gonna plug this فين بقى؟ plug these values كلها in equation 4 to get my a to get my z. يبقى x squared يبقى 2 squared plus y squared negative z squared is equal to 0 يعني z squared is equal to 5 صح؟ يعني z is plus or minus root 5. يبقى you have something اهو values اهو كلها x, y and z. يبقى now you have the point 2, 1 and plus or minus root 5 simply. But this is a good observation that you did, Carolus. You observed that equation 3 is the simplest. From this one, I got a value for lambda, plugged it in the others, and I got my point. Okay. يبقى بالتالي the function values at this point 2, 1 plus minus root 5 is equal to what's the function هنا كانت؟ The distance اللي هي x minus a x minus 4 يبقى أنا عندي هنا 2 minus 4 squared مش كده plus y which is turned out to be 1 minus 2 squared plus z squared اللي هي plus or minus root 5 all squared. يبقى بالتالي the distance turned out to be أو the distance squared كام هنا؟ يبقى عندي 2 squared which is a 4 1 5 و5 يبقى 10 يبقى في 10. يبقى بالتالي the function value at these 2 points actually is turned out to be 10. أو بمعنى آخر my distance is equal to square root of a square root of 10. Is this a maximum بقى ولا minimum value? We'll observe or we will note that the x, y, and z can change arbitrarily very large مش كده and f can take larger values. يبقى بالتالي definitely this is an absolute this is a minimum of the closest distance possible. طيب now we took the case z is not equal to 0. What if I considered z أصلا is a 0? انت هنا you took a special case وقلت z is not equal to 0, you divided by 0, you got your lambda, substituted, you got a value. I want to make sure there are no other points in the problem. فبالتالي هنا لو حطيت z بزيرو يبقى هيديني problem 3 equation 3 0 equals a 0 مش كده؟ يبقى I'll end up with x minus 4 equals إذا حطيت z بزيرو let's على طول حتى I'll notice something هنا when I put it in equation 4 هلاقي x squared plus y squared equals a equals 0 مش كده؟ ما هو x squared plus y squared minus z squared is a 0 يعني x squared هنا that it has only one solution مش كده؟ what is this solution؟ امتى x squared plus y squared is a 0 if and only if مش كده؟ x is a 0 and y is a 0. Okay, يبقى if x is a 0, y is 0, يبقى the point I'm talking about is the point 0, 0 actually is not satisfied by the derivatives, by these scalar derivatives. يبقى if I plug these in 1 and 2 هلاقي هنا لما احط x ب0 هيديني يبقى negative 4 equals 0. يبقى when I plug this in equation 1 I'll find that 0 is negative 4 is equal to 0, which is not possible. يبقى في contradiction هنا أو it's not possible. يبقى this point did not satisfy the Lagrange condition هو scale equation number 1. يبقى بالتالي it's not possible. يبقى this is not a possible solution. خلاص يبقى I ended with only one case اللي هي this case and this is my answer. يبقى this is a minimum distance. Types of problem زي دي بقى. عندي
طب دكتور
Yes.
هو الحاجات دي ممكن نحلها بالليكتشر اللي فاتت عادي صح؟ بس دي طريقة جديدة.
بالظبط كده.
اوكي.
لأن احنا اوريدي حلينا حاجة زي كده، كنت بتقولي هبلاج تشيلي الزد سكوير وتجيبي ده هنا صح؟ يبقى بقت فانكشن واي وتجيبي كريتيكال بوينت وتشيك السكند ديريفيتيف تيست أو بأوبزرفيشن. ماشي؟ Yes, you can do this. بس ساعات زي ما قلت لك ساعات you come up with messy calculations بيبقى Lagrange sometimes is simpler يعني. بس حاجة زي كده عندي rectangular وعايزة وهنا ما فيش بقى أي function أنا اللي I'm gonna construct الفانكشن والconstraint معايا. إيه الحاجة الوحيدة that is given هنا this 12 meter square. What does this resemble in words كده؟ عايزة أحط بدلها كلمة أحط هنا إيه؟
area.
إيه؟
الاريا بتاعت البوكس.
بالظبط حتى السيرفيس اريا بتاعت البوكس صح؟ طيب بالتالي now I know that I have a surface area of the box and what do I need to minimize أو maximize؟
الفوليوم.
الفوليوم. يبقى بالتالي I need maximum إيه؟ maximum volume. يبقى now شوية كده عندي فكرة what I'm going to do. I want to know مين ال F بتاعتي and this will be my constraint. مش كده يا جماعة؟ طب I want to بقى to write formulas for the F and G. يبقى I need variables. يبقى I don't begin unless I define أو specifically كده صراحة أقول له my length is كذا my width is كذا and so on. مين ال length هسميه إيه مين ال width and so on. Got the idea? يبقى before using variables you should always define them. يبقى بالتالي what is the best way to define your dimensions هنا length والwidth والheight. Now we're talking 3 dimension x, y, z. What is the best way to define these?
يبقى x, y.
X و y. إذا أنا قلت length is x, what does this mean? برضو ليها أبعاد يعني. دي معناها إن أنا actually I took one of the vertices مش كده of the box وحطيته فين؟ على الأوريجين. مش ده معناها؟ بحيث إن أنا السايد بتاعي ده x بقى إيه؟ بقى length, right? And the other side y هو الإيه؟ هو الwidth. كل حاجة لازم يكون ليها meaning يعني مش باخد بس x وخلاص. x معناه إن أنا I put one of my vertices هنا فبالتالي length هو x يبقى same way يبقى width هو y and the height definitely will be my z. Got the idea? You must be very clear how you defined your values. وبالتالي معنى ان انا خدت x y z معناها I put one of my vertices مش كده on الايه on the origin بس and then start بقى doing the job. انت كده you defined your variable, start بقى putting your f يبقى my function f which is the volume will be ايه بقى what is the volume will be about the box length times width times height. خلاص انا معايا variables. What is your surface area اللي هي g function. هو هنا قال لي it is the area without قال لي لازم اخلي بالي من كل الكلام يبقى بالتالي I need the surface area without the top. I don't have this صح؟ يبقى بالتالي I have a base and I have four faces صح؟ يبقى what is the area of the base x times y صح يا جماعة؟ What is the area of the face مثلا ده x times z what times 2 بالظبط كده I have 2 of them وعندي برضو y times z I have 2 of them. يبقى this is my surface area. What do I know? ايه constraint إن my surface area is equal to 12 meters. يبقى this is my g, this is the constraint and this is the function to be maximized. يبقى بالتالي when I use Lagrange multiplier to solve this problem يبقى I'm gonna get the gradient of f equated by scalar multiple of the gradient of g get my x, y, z and so on. يبقى أنا هيبقى say مثلا هيبقى عندي y, z x, z مش كده and x, y is equal to lambda y plus 2z and so on بقى x plus 2z وهنا هيبقى كام؟ في الآخر عندك 2x
2x و 2y
2x plus 2y ماشي خلاص you get your equations yz equals lambda y plus 2z and so on. Take care زي ما قلت لك في الكيسز كلها to be considered that if you divide it by variable يبقى you should exclude إنها is equal to 0 and then consider the case 0 alone ماشي you never يعني cancel out variables unless as if you divided by this variable فبالتالي you exclude. يبقى these are my three equations اهم في x, y, z in addition to the constraint اللي هي xy plus 2xz plus 2yz equals 12 ماشي solve get your point plug it in the function get your max. Got the idea? Any questions هنا؟ يبقى this is another type of problem here and I wasn't given أي حاجة أنا I constructed my function وبرضو I constructed my constraint equation. Okay.
دكتور هو هنا لو عايزين نحل ال equations دي أسهل طريقة إن إحنا نحلها إن إحنا substitute ال x, y, z في ال fourth equation.
هنا أهو. لا مش دايما شرط انك انت حاجه تقولي
لا انا بتكلم عن question دوت يعني
ده specific. لا actually هنا هيبقى most probably اسهل حاجه ان انا الاول اجيبهم كلهم in terms of one variable زي ما عملنا في كده. يعني مثلا هنا حاجه زي كده I think better ان انا اروح اجيب from 1 و 2 و 3 اجيب اللامدا اوكي فهتبقى y z على ايه دي على y plus 2z مش كده و from 2 بنفس الكلام هرجي solve for lambda فهيبقى معايا x z على طبعا دي one of the ways but I don't know ممكن يبقى فيه اسهل على 2x plus 2y اوكي يبقى you have these equations. طبعا these actually are two equations يعني ما انا ممكن اعمل دي مع دي مش كده او I could use مثلا this one with this one. but if I say مثلا took the equation الاولانيه دي مع دي يبقى I'm gonna get cross product بقى يبقى y z انت you don't know before solving هتوصل لايه انت try as it comes with you بقى يبقى عندك هنا x y z مش كده I'm gonna بقى do cross product يبقى x y z plus 2 y z squared equals هضرب ده في ده بقى يبقى x z في y أو x y z plus 2 x z squared يبقى this is another new equation صح؟ if I want to simplify ده will cancel out. هنا مفيش بقى zeros لأن أنا cancel ده عادي صح؟ subtraction. You ended up with بس هنا بقى I'm gonna divide by حاجة غلط شكلها. I'm gonna divide by z يبقى بالتالي z is not equal to 0. يبقى I'm gonna end up with x is equal to y. This is a relation. Got the idea?
Yes.
هنعمل نفس الكلام هنا بقى. يبقى same مثلا هتبقى نفس القصة بقى 2x squared z 2xyz cross product هنا مع هنا بقى. يبقى هنا هديك x squared y plus 2xyz cancel out برضه هتلاقي هنا 2xy divide by x برضه يبقى x is not equal to 0 يبقى I ended up with y equals z. صح كده ولا أنا حاسة حاجة غلط؟ لا 2z equals 1. يبقى انت هنا كده واضح من هنا ان انت جبت x as a function of y وجبت z as a function of y يبقى better write it like this z as a function of y. Now I can plug in the fourth equation. Got the idea? I got formulas for all my variables in terms of 1 بس يبقى بالتالي now I can plug in. يبقى بالتالي هتبقى function من y بس I can get my y يبقى then get my x get my z. Got it? This بقى type of problem. I want the extreme values of f on the region described by this inequality. إيه الفرق بين دي وبين the previous problems؟
هيبقى يعني set of numbers اللي هنجيبها.
بالظبط بقت set of numbers دي ما بقتش level curve دي بقت set of numbers ده ellipse وانت عايز اللي جوه extreme values ممكن تكون جوه الدي بتاعتك دي صح؟ Let's call this بقى the set of values دي x squared plus 4y squared less than or equal 1. How do we solve such problems؟ في الأول when we revised last lecture قلنا بعمل إيه عشان أحل المسألة دي؟ As if I'm finding extreme values on a closed bounded set مش كده؟ دي ما بقتش level curve دي ما بقتش constraint ده أنا عايز الباوندري in addition to it to the points inside these boundary points. ماشي يا جماعة؟ How do we solve such problem? إزاي أجيب absolute value extreme values inside the domain؟
أنا مش فاهمة عليه هو إيه اللي مطلوب أصلا. يعني هو عايز المينيمم ولا الماكسيمم؟
عايزة تجيبي extreme values of f في الدومين وكمان على الباوندريز بتاعته صح؟ مش احنا في أول ليكتشر خالص قلنا لما بنحل المسائل أنواع من المسائل قلنا عندنا these types قلنا يا إما local extrema فكنت بجيب critical أو second derivative مع second صح؟ لو أنا عايز absolute in a close bounded domain قلنا بيبقى معايا الست دي صح؟ بجيب الكريتيكال بوينتس inside the domain وبعدين ببص على الباوندريز وبعدين بكمبير values.
احنا بنعمل كده عشان هي inequality.
بالظبط كده عشان هنا كده inequality. It is different than the previous problems اللي هي كان دايما I'm solving a function مثلا زي بتاعتنا مثلا كانت x و y وبعدين x squared كانت حاجه كده مثلا equals 8. هنا equality صح؟ ده كان level curve واحد وكنت بحاول اشوف هو بيتاتش فين البوينتس بتاعتي صح؟ انا كنت بس concerned points على الباوندري ما كنتش ببص جوه ليه؟ ما كنتش ببص جوه الست دي صح؟ انا كنت ببص بس على الباوندري ده صح؟ I need the point on the boundary. انما هنا my points actually could be هنا او could be هنا. يبقى my points could be either in the domain أو could be على boundaries. فخلاص يبقى this is an extreme value theorem صح؟ To get my extreme value. لأن زي ما بقول لك أغلب في الامتحان أنا I won't tell you use Lagrange use extreme value. You must deduce by yourself the difference between this problem واللي فاتوا inequality. هناك كنت ببص بس على الباوندري هنا لا أنا ببص على الباوندري وجوه الباوندري ماشي يا جماعة؟ طيب ايه steps كانت 3 steps. First step find my critical points مش كده؟ وبعدين look at ايه؟ the extreme values فين؟ على الباوندري صح يا جماعة؟ get my boundary points ساعتها. وبعدين قلنا step 3 ان انا I'm gonna ايه compare values from step 1 and 2. Let's بقى do this. بس انا هنا I want to make use of the Lagrange بقى in step 2. I want to simplify the problem شوية باستخدام اللagrange. الأول في step 1 عادية أنا I'm gonna get my critical points يبقى I'm gonna get partial f partial x. ما هي ال f طبعا هي دي اللي هي e to the power negative xy صح؟ get partial f partial x يبقى هتبقى negative y e to the negative xy partial f partial y negative x e to the power negative xy equated by 0. Find your critical points. What's the solution هنا? y is a 0 x is a 0 يبقى I have a critical point فعلا which is the point 0 0. Don't do بقى second derivative. All you have to do is plug it in the function, find the function value at this point. e to the power 0 is 1. خلاص this is a value I'm gonna keep it in the end to compare with صح؟ طب let's do بقى step step number 2. What is step 2? You want to check your boundaries. مين هما my boundaries? What is my boundary in this problem? اهي المسألة.
domain الاكستريمز بتاعت الدومين.
قولي لي الايكويشن نفسها.
هيبقى الإليبس يا دكتور بس equal ل 1.
بالظبط كده برافو عليك. مين أحمد ولا مين؟
يحيى.
يحيى شكرا يا يحيى. يبقى بالتالي الباوندريز هي مش جوه بقى أنا خلاص أنا I looked inside I found the point 0 0 is a critical point. إنما now I want to look at the boundaries which is the ellipse itself x squared plus 4y squared equal 1 لغاية بقى inequality. Actually if I'm looking for extreme values of the function اللي هي e to the power minus xy subject to this boundary I'll call it g which is x squared يبقى as if I can use in this part of my extreme value theorem I can use the Lagrange multiplier. Why didn't I do it like last lecture? لأن الباوندريز هنا actually difficult لأن أنا علشان resemble this boundary actually هتبقى أسهل بالR والثيتا وهقعد أعمل شغل كتير بقى عشان أحولها لبولر وبعدين أجيبها. فactually Lagrange will simplify things here. يبقى step 2 I'm gonna apply Lagrange يبقى I'm gonna get the gradient of f equals scalar the gradient of g. أوكي يعني بالتالي الجريدينت f أنا لسه جايباها اللي هي بالتالي minus y e to the minus xy minus x e to the minus xy equals the Lagrange of يبقى 2x قصدي لامدا في الجريدينت g اللي هو 2x 8y. quickly كده يبقى minus y e to the minus xy equals 2 lambda x minus x e to the minus xy equals 8 lambda y. يبقى now I have two equations in addition to the constraint equation اللي هي x squared plus 4y squared equals 1. Okay, we can solve these. I can get my boundary points. I can get the extreme values at the boundary points. Now our time finished. I think. What are the points هنا? طب check it كده for last lecture عشان الوقت يبقى بالتالي you're gonna get your boundary points. Last step you're gonna compare ايه بقى؟ all values. You're gonna compare the critical point with the values يعني of the function with boundary points. طبعا the largest will be my maximum, the minimum will be my the smallest will be my minimum. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? We're gonna do our worksheet برضو. I'm gonna put you in breakout rooms. I'm gonna stay برضو with you. معانا I think Farid. Muhammad has problems I think with his internet today. Read, I make you a co-host بقى.
اوكي تمام.
Please يعني discuss it كده للworksheet together. Don't copy please. I want to see feedback of your work يعني. ماشي. Actually أنا ملاحظة الناس بتمشي. We could stay in this room. بلاش breakout rooms.